Thomas Alive to Die presents
2012 Aurora, Colorado shooting. The shooting occurred in Theater 9 at the Cinemark Century 16 Multiplex, located in the town center at Aurora Shopping Mall at 14300 East Alameda Avenue. Police said that Holmes bought a ticket, entered the theater, and sat in the front row. About 20 minutes into the film, he left Theater 9 through an emergency exit door beside the movie screen, with direct access to the lightly used parking area at the back of the complex, while propping the door slightly open with a plastic tablecloth holder. There were about 400 people inside Theater 9. Holmes went to his car, changed into protective clothing, and retrieved his guns. About 30 minutes into the movie, police say, around 12:30 a.m., he re-entered the theater through the exit door. Holmes was dressed in black and wore a gas mask, a load-bearing vest, a ballistic helmet, bullet-resistant leggings, a bullet-resistant throat protector, a groin protector, and tactical gloves. He was listening to techno music through a set of headphones so that he could not hear anything from people in the theater. Initially, few in the audience considered Holmes to be a threat. Some witnesses thought he was wearing a costume, like other audience members who had dressed up for the screening. Some believed he was playing a prank, while others thought he was part of a special effects setup for the film's premiere, or a publicity stunt by the studio or theater management. Holmes reportedly threw one canister towards the left side of the theater, emitting a gas or smoke that partially obscured the audience members' vision, made their throats and skin itch, and caused eye irritation. He fired a 12-gauge Remington 870 Express tactical shotgun, first at the ceiling and then at the audience. He also fired a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 semi-automatic rifle with a 100-round drum magazine, which eventually malfunctioned. Finally, he fired a .40 caliber Glock 22 Gen 4 handgun. He shot first to the back of the room, and then toward people in the aisles. A bullet passed through the wall and hit 3 people in adjacent Theater 8, which was screening the same film. Witnesses said the multiplex's fire alarm system began sounding soon after the attack began, and staff told people in Theater 8 to evacuate. Holmes fired 76 shots in the theater, 6 from the shotgun, 65 from the semi-automatic rifle, and 5 from the .40 caliber handgun. The first phone calls to emergency services via 911 were made at 12:39 a.m. Police arrived within 90 seconds and found 3 .40 caliber handgun magazines, a shotgun, and a large drum magazine on the floor of the theater. Some people reported the shooting via Twitter or text messaging rather than calling the police. Officers were already at the theater by the time that the tweets were sent. Ambulances were hindered by chaos and congestion in the parking lot, and they were unable to reach the back of the complex where police had pulled the injured out through the emergency exit doors of Theater 9. Sergeant Stephen Redfern, one of the first police officers to arrive on the scene, sent victims to area hospitals in squad cars. At about 12:45 a.m., police officer Jason Obiot apprehended Holmes behind the cinema, next to his car, without resistance. Because of his tactical clothing, Holmes was at first mistaken for another police officer. He was described as being calm and disconnected during his arrest. 2 federal officials said that Holmes had dyed his hair red and called himself the Joker, although authorities later declined to confirm this. 3 days later, at his first court appearance in Centennial, Colorado, Holmes's hair appeared reddish-orange. Later, the Colorado district attorney who prosecuted Holmes said he never called himself the Joker, and blamed the federal officials for the rumor. The officers found several firearms in the theater and inside the shooter's car, including another Glock 22 handgun. Holmes was found carrying a first aid kit and spike strips, which he later admitted in an interview he had planned to use if police either shot at or chased him. Following his arrest, Holmes was initially jailed at the Arapahoe County Detention Center, under suicide watch. The police interviewed more than 200 witnesses of the shooting. Speaking on behalf of himself and FBI agent James Holmes, who was in charge of the investigation, Aurora Police Chief Dan Oates said he was confident that the shooter acted alone. When apprehended, Holmes told the police that he had booby-trapped his apartment with explosive devices. Police evacuated 5 buildings surrounding his Aurora residence, which was about 5 miles north of the cinema. Holmes' apartment complex is limited to University of Colorado Medical Center students, patients, and employees. One day after the shooting, officials disarmed an explosive device that was wired to the apartment's front door, allowing a remote-controlled robot to enter and disable other explosives. The apartment held more than 30 homemade grenades, wired to a control box in the kitchen and filled with at least 30 US gallons of gasoline. Neighbors reported loud music from the apartment around midnight on the night of the massacre, and one went to his door to tell him she was calling the police. She said the door seemed to be unlocked, but she chose not to open it. A police official said a Batman mask was found in the apartment. On July 23, police finished collecting evidence from the apartment. 2 days later, residents were allowed to return to the 4 surrounding buildings, and 6 days later, residents were allowed to move back into the formerly booby-trapped building. 12 fatalities were reported along with 70 injuries. 70 were hit by bullets, and were reported by mainstream news as the most victims of any mass shooting in United States history. This figure was not surpassed until the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting, which killed 49 people and injured 58 others for a combined total of 107 casualties. 4 people's eyes were irritated by the tear gas grenades, while 8 others sustained non-gunshot injuries while fleeing the theater. The massacre was the deadliest shooting in Colorado since the Columbine High School massacre on April 20, 1999. 10 victims died at the scene and 2 more were pronounced dead in local hospitals. The people murdered were: Jonathan Blunk, 26, had survived the Eden Center shooting in Toronto that occurred a month prior to the massacre. Alexander J. Boyd, 18, Jesse Childress, 29, Gordon Cowden, 51, Jessica Gawi, 24, John Larimer, 27, Matt McQuinn, 27, Michaela Medique, 23, Veronica Moser Sullivan, 6, Alex Sullivan, 27, Alexander C. Teves, 24, died protecting their girlfriends or friends. Rebecca Wingo, 32. The injured were treated at 5 area hospitals. On July 25, 3 of the 5 hospitals treating victims announced they would limit medical bills or forgive them entirely. Ashley Moser, Veronica Moser Sullivan's mother, suffered critical injuries after being shot in the chest. She was rendered a paraplegic. She miscarried a week after the attack. Caleb Medley, the last victim discharged, left University Hospital on September 12. He had serious brain damage and an injury to his right eye from a shotgun blast to the head, and underwent 3 brain surgeries. He required a feeding tube, had severely impaired movement, and could no longer speak. The Community First Foundation collected more than $5 million for a fund for victims and their families. In September, victims and their families received surveys asking about their preferences for how collected funds should be distributed, either by dividing it equally among victims or through a needs assessment process. On November 16, 2012, the Aurora Victim Relief Fund announced that each family of the dead would receive $220,000. Holmes' booking photo was released and he first appeared in court on July 23, 2012. According to press reports, he seemed dazed and largely unaware of his surroundings. On July 30th, Colorado prosecutors filed formal charges against Holmes, including 24 counts of first-degree murder, 116 counts of attempted first-degree murder and 1 count of illegal possession of explosives. 2 charges were filed for each victim to expand the opportunities for prosecutors to obtain convictions. Colorado State District Court Judge William B. Sylvester, who was the trial judge overseeing the case, placed a gag order on lawyers and law enforcement, sealing the court file and barring the University of Colorado from releasing public records relating to Holmes' year at the school. Media organizations challenged the sealing of the court file. On August 9, Holmes' attorney said he is mentally ill and they needed more time to assess the nature of his illness. The disclosure was made at a court hearing in Centennial, Colorado, where news media organizations asked a judge to unseal court documents in the case. Prosecutors alleged on August 24, 2012, that Holmes told a classmate he wanted to kill people 4 months before the shooting. A judge ruled on August 30 that a notebook written by Holmes, in which he allegedly described a violent attack, was covered by physician-patient privilege because it was addressed to his psychiatrist. This made it inadmissible as evidence unless Holmes' mental health became an issue in the case. Prosecutors dropped their request for access to the notebook on September 20, 2012. Due to suicide attempts made by Holmes, Judge Sylvester agreed to postpone proceedings until December 2012. On January 2, 2013, prosecutors and defense attorneys in the case returned to court in advance of the preliminary hearing, the public's first officially sanctioned look at the evidence, due to the gag order. It began on January 7. prosecutors offered their case as to why the trial should proceed, and defense lawyers argued that it should not. At the conclusion, Judge Sylvester decided there was enough relevant, admissible evidence to proceed to a trial. Also on January 7, lawyers for both sides argued whether to admit 4 unspecified prescription bottles and immunization records investigators had seized from Holmes' apartment when they searched it in July 2012, considering doctor-patient confidentiality laws. The judge ruled in October that prosecutors could keep the items. On March 27, Holmes' lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for prosecutors not seeking the death penalty. On April 1, the prosecution announced it had declined the offer. Arapahoe County District Attorney George Brouchler said, "It's my determination and my intention that in this case for James Egan Holmes justice's death." Jury selection started on January 20, 2015. It ended on April 15, 2015. The trial started on April 27, 2015. The jury consisted of 19 women and 5 men, 2 of whom had connections to the Columbine High School massacre. Arapahoe County prosecutors said that Holmes was sane during the shooting and intended to kill all 400 people in the theater, while Holmes' lawyers said he had a psychotic episode during the attack. On May 7, an FBI agent displayed pieces of evidence at the trial, including Holmes' body armor, an arsenal of weapons, unfired ammunition, and a helmet with strands of his dyed orange hair. Jurors examined the evidence for 30 minutes. Holmes was represented by the Colorado State Public Defender. On May 26, details of Holmes' notebook, reportedly found in a university mailroom addressed to his psychiatrist Lynn Fenton, were entered into evidence at the trial for the first time. The notebook elaborated on Holmes' obsession to kill in the last 10 years prior to the shooting, his dissatisfaction with life and finding work, as well as health issues. It also had details of his planning for the shooting, which prosecutors said indicated Holmes premeditated the attack. On May 27, Dr. William Reed, a court-appointed psychiatrist, testified that Holmes was mentally ill but legally sane. Reed and another doctor evaluated Holmes in December 2013 and determined that he understood what he was doing. On June 8, a second psychiatrist, Jeffrey Metzner, testified that Holmes was mentally ill but legally sane during the shooting, and suffers from schizoaffective disorder. On June 9, 3 jurors were dismissed from the trial due to concerns of their violating orders not to talk about news reports about the case. In the following week, 2 additional jurors were dismissed, the first due to emotional problems following the shooting of a family member, the second for recognizing a survivor who was wounded in the massacre. On the same day, Judge Carlos Sammer asked Holmes if he would testify in court, and advised him of his rights to do so. Holmes chose not to testify. By July 10, the prosecution and the defense rested their cases. Closing statements were made on July 14, with formal deliberations beginning the following morning. On July 16, after jury deliberations, Holmes was found guilty of 24 counts of first-degree murder, 140 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 1 count of possessing illegal explosives, and a sentence enhancement of a crime of violence. The 2 murder convictions for each death were first-degree murder or attempted murder after deliberation, and first-degree murder or attempted murder with extreme indifference. On July 27, Holmes' sister stated in her testimony that her brother became withdrawn from the family after they moved from Salinas to San Diego during his early teenage years. On July 28, Holmes' father pleaded for his son's life, stating that he is severely mentally ill. He displayed photos of camping trips and family vacations with Holmes to the jury. On July 30, Holmes' lawyers made a final appeal to the jurors, urging them to consider mental illness in his sentencing despite their rejection of the insanity defense used in the trial. The appeal for clemency was rejected on August 3 under the basis that mitigating factors such as mental illness did not outweigh aggravating factors such as the number of casualties in the massacre. Holmes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on August 7 after jurors failed to reach a unanimous decision over sentencing him to death. Formal sentencing began on August 24 and was expected to last for 3 days. At the end of the hearing on August 26, Sammer formally sentenced Holmes to 12 life imprisonment sentences without parole and a maximum of 3,318 additional years on attempted murder and explosives possession convictions. A grassroots community center, Aurora Strong Resilience Center, was established by community leaders, elected officials, and mental health professionals as a response to the shooting. The center offers therapy for people who experience traumatic stress from the theater shooting, and also people who were victims of other crimes and refugees who experienced a traumatic event in their country of origin before coming to the U.S. The Century 16 Theater where the shooting occurred was rebranded as the Century Aurora Theater by its parent company Cinemark Theaters. Despite heavy criticism from families and loved ones of victims, the theater was not demolished and reopened to the public after cleaning and renovation on January 25, 2013, nearly 6 months after the shooting. The reopening ceremony, which was boycotted by opponents of the theater's reopening, included a memorial service and a screening of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Theater Room 9, where the actual shooting occurred, was combined with an adjoining room into a new XD theater room. A memorial to the victims of the attack was installed near Aurora Municipal Center, some 930 yards from the theater, and dedicated on July 19, 2018, one day before the 6th anniversary of the attack. It consists of a park-like dell with 83 abstract birds, one for each victim. 13 of the birds, with translucent wings, are on a center column and represent the 12 dead and the unborn child. The memorial, titled Essentiate, was designed by artist Dow Bloomberg.
If you have any fond memories, please indicate it at the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and like.